All right, so thanks for joining us for this version of Lexicon Live. We're actually going to do a panel using multiple executives covering multiple areas of operating a law firm profitably, taking advantage of the fact that we're entering a new fiscal year. What is it that you need to do to set your firm up for success? A little bit about Lexicon, right? We are a practice management software provider and a services provider. We've been in business for well over a decade, and we have helped the firm grow from 10 offices to over 100 offices in that period of time. Our software includes a ton of features that other software packages are going to try to tell you need to be upsells. Things like a document management system and a trust accounting module, an Outlook plugin. All of these are standard included in our software offering today. On top of that, we offer services that seamlessly integrate with our software. So whether you're looking for call center support, client onboarding, marketing, IT support, bill collection help, virtual receptionists, even facilities and marketing, we do all of these services for you. It all ties seamlessly into the software. You can take all, some, or none of those. Either way, we're happy to be here to support you. Why choose us? Again, we have this wide array of software services and support that we can provide to any firm. We've been built to scale from a solo practitioner up to an AmLaw 100 size firm. We've helped firms grow for well over a decade. We are capable of supporting any type of practice area, any size law firm. We've customized the software so that you take your software instance and you make it your own. We don't need to do any development work. We don't need to charge you extra for development time. We just help you set your instance up so that it fully supports your firm's needs and bills and operates the way you want it to. And on average, a firm will see $20,000 to $30,000 in value per attorney by implementing a system like Lexicon, which helps them more accurately collect the time that they're serving and then create back-end efficiencies by having a process that works as information flows through your firm in a very effortless way. The hosts are going to be myself, Scott Brennan, I'm the CEO of Lexicon, Tom Busser, our CFO and COO, Sarah Rattan-Bates, our Director of Legal Operations and Training, and Brad Paubel, our CIO. Because we have so much that we want to cover in this webinar, we're actually going to break it into two separate segments. We'll run them both live, one this week, one in 2 weeks. And in them, we'll discuss client relationship management, financial performance, talent management, culture, succession planning, and cybersecurity. In the first week, we'll really cover client relationships, financial performance, and talent management. And then in the next webinar, we'll cover culture, succession planning, and cybersecurity, and how all of these things work together to help your firm prosper. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them to our experts in the chat during the webinar. A little bit again about today. We're going to be looking at all of the things we already mentioned. The entire purpose of today's presentation is helping you get the most out of your law firm. Drive your revenue up, drive your profitability up, have happier employees who are helping to sustain that mission of making more money and doing it safely in an environment where nobody can have access to data unless you've authorized it. Let's talk about client relationships first. So 81% of law firms reported a revenue drop during COVID-19, right? That's probably not surprising. I will tell you that we have had clients who were able to maintain their revenue through the entire pandemic as a result of it, an improvement or an increase in the amount of marketing we were doing for them. It all comes down to your strategy as a firm and whether you want to try to maintain that same level of revenue, spend a little more money on marketing in order to continue to bring that flow of customers in the door, or if you are content to see your revenue drop. I don't understand anybody who does want to see their revenue drop, but I understand not wanting to spend more money in marketing if you don't think that it's actually going to help move the needle for you from a profitability and revenue perspective. So what should you be thinking about as we enter a new year, especially a year where the pandemic is still ongoing? So you really need to think about your client base, right? So much of your business is coming from repeat customers people that you've spoken to and worked with in the past. Who comprises that base? And how does that align with your strategy for growing or maintaining the revenue and the profitability of your firm? Are you seeing that your clients are dying off? Are you seeing your clients are moving away? Are they going to ground and avoiding going out into the world because of the pandemic? And that's actually negatively impacting your business. You really need to think about what the impact of what's happening in the world is on your client base. And then, what are you going to do about it to change that? Do you find more people who resemble your current clients? Do you think about opening your practice up and focusing on some adjacent areas that maybe 2 years ago you wouldn't have thought were really part of what you wanted to do, but today maybe it makes more sense to take that half step in to a new type of law? What are you really thinking about doing when it comes to addressing your target market, either your new or your existing target market? The things that you might have done in the past to drum up business, like going to a country club, attending conferences and events and meeting with people live, those things may not be a reality for another 6 months or more. That means you need to be thinking about new marketing channels. You need to really be thinking about, do you have the right mix between a digital presence, maybe a print presence, radio, potentially even television, depending on the type of law that you are focusing on. Right? So understand your current portfolio. Make sure you understand what piece of the market that portfolio represents for you. What's your opportunity? And then really address that gap. Who are they? How do you get to them? How do you find people that look like the kind of people that have needs that your firm can solve? All right, so as we saw before, 81% of firms have seen a decrease in their revenue as a result of COVID-19. Even more horrifying, over a quarter of those firms have seen their revenue drop by over half. A 50% drop in revenue for over 1/4 of the law firms negatively impacted by COVID-19. So with that, let's talk to Tom Boster, our CFO and COO, and say, what do we do to reverse that, Tom?
Sure, thank you, Scott. So overall, any year it's very, very important to really monitor your financial performance and really think about your plans and the considerations. Even more so now, I think the pandemic has taught us to be a bit more on high alert in regards to a few of these things that maybe we didn't think about them, or maybe we just thought about a few of these things a couple times a year, and now we really need to be thinking and concentrating on them throughout the year. So, really just fundamentally in any year, you need to perform an annual firm assessment, and you really need to be thinking about, what are our strengths? Is revenue growth our strength, or is growth in a certain practice area our strength? Or conversely, are any of those things our weaknesses? It's also very important to be looking at your trends and understand where the business is moving. And if you have a practice area, as Scott said earlier, if you have some of those retargeting the different practice areas, you need to be thinking about how that affects your trend lines and how to capture those trends going forward, and so you can evaluate its success. And then obviously strategies for improvement. And so Scott gave us a couple of tips early on, but we really just need to be focusing on these things every year, regardless if it's a pandemic or year, but obviously especially during this pandemic year. So, as I said before, specifically, there are a few things that we want to focus on during the pandemic, and that really becomes more important to be looking at your productivity trends. Some of those market reliances on what are those practice areas that have been affected, that we have heavily relied on for our business, for existing business and maybe new business. Obviously, managing our expenses. What is our overall profit margin? What is the required investment level? And I think that the pandemic has really brought into play really about, making a few firms rethink how much they invest, how much cash they leave into the business. And really, it can make people a bit skittish about trying to break into a major new investment into a new practice area. But it's just, we need to consider what the business needs, what is your tolerance for risk, and also, be thinking about, though, if you take that risk, what are those rewards and downside?
So Tom, a couple of things we've talked about in the past that really help a firm make more money. It's time tracking in real time, right? So we've talked about it in other webinars, but there is a material impact on not recording your time as soon as humanly possible. Do you want to talk about what a firm could do to actually increase their revenue without doing any extra work?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. So we always know that when we rely our memories around time tracking, that we lose a very, very significant amount of that time. And the longer we go in between the time that we performed work on a client's file to the time that I decide to document that, the losses become larger and larger the more that time expands. So using a practice management software that has a great time tracking, timers integrated into it can actually really help maximize that firm's revenue by maximizing their time capture. A few of the other things is really, as we go through, is really performing that, what I would like to think of as like maybe a financial autopsy. And really what we're doing there is we're kind of building this long-term financial model, and we're looking at to make sure that we're going to have, adequate access to capital. Is there cash flows during certain times of year throughout the entire year going to be adequate to support what my plans and investments are? So in order really to help guide that, it's really, really important to have, a written budget. And, we think a lot, especially some of the smaller firms and maybe even some of the medium-sized firms, that, I'm just going to operate this thing the best I can all throughout the year. In reality, there's something tangible to having a budget in writing. And so once you have a plan in writing, it becomes more real to us, and it's very, very easy month to month to month to have times to deviate from those plans and not realize what a long-term cumulative effect that has. So therefore, having that written budget, looking at it every month, how am I doing, how I thought I'd be doing to how I really am doing, and then that allows you to adjust along the way. And you also, as we're adjusting along the way, someplace that we can really, really accentuate cash flow and profitability can be through being sure that you have a good invoicing system, that it's responsive to what the needs of your firm are, how your clients like to be billed, how frequently your clients like to be billed, how frequently you need to bill them in order to generate your adequate cash flow. So it's very, very important to have a practice management software that really streamlines not just your time capture to help maximize that revenue, but also getting those bills out the door and maximizing how much makes it to the billed line and is eventually collected. So along that way, we really want to be sure that as we're looking at this budget, we're looking at these processes, that we have those key performance indicators identified and that we're tracking those along the way. So, how do I measure how I'm doing throughout the year? Well, really, from a financial standpoint, regardless of your firm size, it really is important for you to have a detailed income statement. And really what this is this full suite of financial statements from an accounting standpoint. So really, that's an income statement. That is a balance sheet to understand what are your assets and liabilities. What do you have out there to pay into the future as I'm looking for cash planning? Having a statement of cash flow. A statement of cash flow really helps you go back and look and say, hey, where did I spend all of my money? How did we get here? And it can also help you understand some of those investments that you've made along the way into your business and understand whether or not those investments are giving you a proper return. And then very, very importantly as well, I think even more so important than it's ever has been for a firm is what's your statement of retained earnings? And so really analyzing over time on an interim basis, what is the capital that you have into the business, and is it substantial enough to carry you through all your business operating plans?
And Tom, on cash flow, one thing that I think a lot of firms don't really think about is none of them got into the business of law to be a bank. But so many firms are advancing fees to courts. They're paying vendors. They could be directly paid by the client and keep the firm out of the business of lending money to a client who may end up stiffing them and not paying them back. No firm's gone out of business as a result of fronting all these loans to their clients. However, you start to accumulate a bunch of these on an ongoing basis on a robust firm. The numbers can get pretty substantial, and it does impact your cash flow and creates a drag. Have you talked to many firms about what are best practices around what should you and shouldn't you think about actually paying on behalf of a client?
Yeah, really when it comes to advancing costs on a client, it really comes down to a couple of things. One is really, in order to maintain this client relationship and the client's size relative to your firm, is it necessary that I still need to advance these costs for them? So in certain cases, it may be most advantageous long-term to go ahead and advance those costs. But direct recommendations and mitigation plans for COVID this year were to really take a look at this for some of our clients and to minimize. So some things are easily passed along and passed through and very, very difficult to maybe measure. Others are. So basically, those experts, those medical experts, those forensic accountants, those folks that are really large valuation companies, those that are really larger ticket, are the easiest to pass along to your client because they're easily identifiable to that client. Now, when it comes to some of the soft costs that some firms still bill through to their clients, like postage or copies or filing fees, we really don't recommend that you have to go that deep in order to make a difference, but really think about some of those larger disbursements that you may pay for experts or other large costs that you're advancing on behalf of that client, and really thinking about, hey, could I have that client establish their own relationship with that expert and pay them so the expert does take that collection risk, and also you're not having to finance essentially that client's payment of experts, and which is really helps free up your cash flow for other more important needs. So it's a very, very good point, Scott. Another thing that I think it's time for a lot of people to readdress, if your state allows you to pass along credit card processing fees to your clients, now is really, I think, a good time to set that up in your system as well. And most billing systems would be very, very easy to do, and that is, you get a statement from your credit card company every month that you understand how much you're paying in fees. That should help you identify what sort of processing fee you might want to establish if it's allowed in your state, and then just set up a simple disbursement in your billing system and code it as a soft cost, would be my recommendation, and just pass that through your billing department back on to that client. So that's a nice little revenue enhancer because, as we all know, depending on who you're using for credit card processing, you may be losing between 2 to 3% of your revenue just up the top paying processing fees. So if you have the opportunity to pass that back to a client in your state, we do feel like it's the time to evaluate that. So really, there's 4 essential practice areas of focus that we really think that you should have. We talked a little bit before about some of those key performance indicators and how to look them, monitor, and see how our health of our firm is. And so number 1, I think it's an oldie but a goodie, but really is, what is your revenue per attorney? Then relative to that revenue, what percentage of that revenue goes out the door in salaries and bonuses to the attorneys, to the staff, just overall, what's not going into your pocket or your partner's pockets, what goes out the door to pay others so you can keep this business going. Marketing, can be a very, very good investment for certain types of firms. And so we do recommend that when you do have marketing, that you do establish a baseline KPI of what makes sense to get a good ROI for you, a return on that investment for marketing. And for many consumer-based firms and even some larger firms, that can be 8 to 10% of your gross revenue. And then lastly, think about just those overhead costs. Rent's always your biggest one. You want to make sure that as you're looking to think about, hey, in this new pandemic world, what's my rent look like? Am I going to push forward with more office hoteling? How much work from home am I going to have? And as you do that, you want to think about, as that next lease is coming up, how can I shrink my footprint? And can I lower my rent costs as a percentage of revenue? Because what you really want to do with rent is you really want to keep it a constant dollar amount, and your revenue goes up, and it actually over time, in certain blocks of time, that your actually rent as a percentage of revenue goes down. So these are just some of the things that it really should be thinking about. And again, shouldn't be thinking about these things once a year or once every 2 years or a long-term financial plan. You really should be thinking about these things, looking at that written budget and monitoring how these KPIs look every single month.
And these stats came from an independent company. They're not our stats. And in fact, I'd say a few things to be aware of. First, rent is certainly going to be very dependent on the size of your firm, how prestigious your office space needs to be for your practice area. The other thing I would say is 65% going to salary. I certainly hope that's a small firm where the principal is counting all of their pay towards that number. Otherwise, that looks like a really heavy cost burden to me for a typical firm.
Yeah, absolutely. There may be certain firms, so that was my thought as well when I saw that stat, Scott, is that surely that includes some salaries that are being paid to the principals through
distributions.
Distributions throughout the year. So yeah, 65% is a very, very tough number for any industry, let alone the law industry, to maintain a good, healthy profit. So now we'll turn it over to Tom G, who will show us a lexicon demo to really, he can help accentuate a few of the things that we hit on. We talked a little bit about time tracking, how it could look at your revenue and increase it, some of your KPIs, and the efficiency of your billing process. So take it away, Tom G.
Thanks, Scott and Tom. When using Lexicon Practice Management software, you can customize the intake process to work for you. Depending on the scenario, you can input potential client data as you or your receptionist would normally receive it. Or, as an example, a potential client walks in your door with papers and has a hearing in 5 days. Don't waste time inputting all of their data into the system when you can just jump right to scheduling to make sure your team has the availability to help this client. With scheduling built into the intake process, there's no need anymore to bounce between your email client and your practice management software constantly, which means less clicking and more intaking. Even as expedited as Lexicon software has made the intake process, our virtual receptionist can handle intaking for your firm as well to help streamline and give you more time to work with your clients. Our virtual receptionists have over 12 years experience in the legal industry and ensure that your call is always answered and a great client experience is always guaranteed. You pay by the minute, so you don't have to worry about paying for time they aren't working, nor handle their benefits. They are fully trained on your firm and practice area and know how to handle potential legal clients. Utilizing timers gives you an accurate, real-time total of your billable time. You can even use timers for tracking non-billable activity so you can get a better overall picture of how you and your associates spend their time each day to better assess the profitability of your firm. With accurate timekeeping comes the most accurate bills, which Lexicon has created the ideal billing and invoice environment for. Lexicon's built-in payment processing allows you to not only bill and invoice your clients through our software, but also allows you to process payments, whether it be cash, check, or card. The software allows for the setup of autopay, as well as payment plans to ensure you get paid quicker and in full. Lexicon has some of the lowest credit card processing fees and most likely costs less than your current payment processing provider. Likewise, you can utilize our disbursements and write-offs, which we covered in a previous webinar. Reporting on billable versus non-billable time, realization allows you to get a truer view on your firm's health and understand how you can drive efficiencies to improve profitability. Back to you, Scott.
Thanks for that demo, Tom. I'd like to reintroduce Sarah Rattan Bates, our Director of Legal Operations and Training, and we're going to talk about talent right now.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, so talent in the legal industry is such a huge element of just your day-to-day operations. So some fun stats. First and foremost, 4% of associates leave the firm in the first 3 years. So maybe you're thinking, 3 years, that's good tenure, right? No. As a result, due to turnover, the average large law firm actually loses an estimated $25 million each year. That's a huge number, right?
Yeah, it's gigantic.
Gigantic. But also due to turnover, the top 400 firms lose an estimated $9.1 billion each year. So, what we're saying here is that people leaving, if it's good turnover or bad turnover, it can have a huge impact to your bottom line. So, what can you do when you're considering your talent for the year? Well, first and foremost, perform annual reviews. Now, I don't just mean having a review one-on-one with each member of your team. What I'm saying is you should be stepping back and really reviewing each individual person yourself. not only individuals. Think about your teams, your departments, your practice areas. So maybe you have a team of individuals, attorneys, paralegals, they're solely focused on family law. Maybe you have an estate planning division. Look at each one of these individual groups. Does the talent mesh? Is this the right practice area for these individuals? And once you've done that, don't forget to be looking at and considering your back office. And by back office, what I mean, it's the individuals within your firm who maybe aren't as ingrained in the day-to-day legal aspects. They're maybe non-billers. They could be your receptionist. Maybe you have some in-house people such as accounting. But make sure you are looking at everybody and how their talent fits within your law firm and within those individual respective areas. So other things, though, to be thinking about as you're considering talent is you need to be looking at possible areas of improvement where you can boost that talent. So for me, this is a strong one. It's a big one. It can be a huge impact, and that's in-house training. Can you focus on building and boosting your talent by providing more training opportunities? Now, maybe you can't, and that's okay. Maybe these are just skill sets that are beyond these individuals. Maybe it's not something you want to bring in-house. That's okay too. There's options. You could be going out and looking to hire new people that possess those skill sets, or maybe you have some shortcomings because you don't have an accounting department. Maybe you need some type of virtual receptionist to help you out because that's something within your firm. It's a void that's not filled. Well, outsource it. A great option, as you heard Scott say earlier, Lexicon. We provide all of these different services to help law firms so they can come in day to day and really focus on practicing law. So when you're thinking about addressing talent for the new year as a whole, there are multiple different areas to look at besides just reviewing your people, right? And besides just focusing on what in-house training can be done and what needs to be outsourced. It starts with recruiting. So let's say you've made the decision, you are hiring new people. You gotta make sure that your recruiting is in place. Do you have the right people recruiting for you? What do your posts look like? Do they fully explain and describe the position that you are trying to hire for? It always starts with recruiting. But so now you've recruited, you've hired. The next step, learning and development. I always say that this is the foundation that you lay for yourself, your firm, and the success of the individuals you bring into the organization. So if you haven't, invest in an onboarding process. Invest in onboarding training, that on-the-job information that people need to be incredibly successful at what they are doing for you. Career development is a big one. Most people want to grow. And I want to clarify that career development, it does not always mean a promotion. It could mean simply expanding on skill sets, giving these individuals new tasks, new challenges. But we have to remember that most people, they want to stay invested and they want to grow within their career. So you have an obligation to look into what does that look like and what can you offer for your team members, for your associate attorneys, your paralegals. Engagement and retention. This is a big one. I always like to say that if you are keeping your people engaged, they're going to work harder for you, right? So how do you keep them engaged? And by keeping them engaged, you're going to retain them as a team member. There's a lot of things you can do. For me personally, it's communicate. And the communication is celebrating the wins. It's being open and honest when there's areas of improvement. Maybe the firm didn't quite meet the mark. It's just making sure that your team members, your attorneys, again, your legal staff, that they are a part of that process with you. And if they feel that, they're going to stay. They're going to work harder. They're going to feel like you care and you're invested in them. The next one is feedback and evaluation. So I always say the sooner you can give feedback, the better, right? You need to make sure that if there are areas of improvement, maybe when I say evaluations don't always have to mean an individual. It could also mean a process that you have within your firm. But again, make sure that if you need to give feedback, that you're giving it quickly. Be precise, be detailed about what needs to be looked at and what needs to be addressed. Why that is important, because again, you're thinking about your people. You're thinking about your talent pool, right? And those talented people, they want to know when they're doing well. They want to know if there's something that they need to fix. And the sooner they know it, the better. Compensation, rewards, and promotions. I mean, Scott, who doesn't love all of those things, right?
All good stuff.
All good stuff. Compensation is big. I want to circle back to recruiting though, but make sure that you are being competitive in your compensation when in fact you are hiring people, but also make sure that when you are having your annual reviews, when you are promoting people, that you're considering compensation there as well. And rewards can be a lot of different things. Some people like to have extra PTO. Maybe they like to have a gift card. Maybe you plan an outing for all of your team members and their family. There are a lot of different ways, though, to reward your people, but people need that. They want it. It really, really makes them feel like they're important and they're special to their organization.
And the last few that you've mentioned, really, I think you'll spend more time later talking about culture, but they're really, what's the culture of your firm?
Yeah.
How do your employees fit into that culture?
Yep.
And how do you make sure everybody feels engaged and part of that community?
Yeah, it's huge. They all tie together, exactly. And the last one, people data. And this is really more so to help you. People data can be a lot of different things, but let's look at recruiting. Look at the type of candidates that you're bringing in. Another area, when you are bringing in new candidates or maybe even your current employees, have you thought about doing any type of personality testing? And why this can be incredibly beneficial as you're working through that talent management is it allows you to better understand the people within your organization. It allows you to better understand how to communicate with those individuals, what drives those people. So another thing could be different performance issues. Maybe you're noticing people within the organization are continuously making an error or a mistake in a certain area. All of these things can be put back into a bucket of people management. And it's going to help you be a better, stronger law firm, stronger leaders, and really, really help drive the ability to maintain and acquire and retain exceptional talent within your organization.
Thank you again for joining us with Lexicon Live. These are available online on demand at any time if you don't catch us live. But always come on out to our website, check out lexiconservices.com, go to the /webinar page to find this Lexicon Live or any others that we've done in the past. Listen to our podcast, The Lex Factor. We have two versions. We have the long format where we really dive into an issue impacting the intelligent operation of a law firm. And then we have the Lex Factor briefs where we focus on a quick hit topical story that's in the news and what our thoughts might be and how that could affect you in your practice of law. And last but not least, we'd love for you to come to the site, schedule a demo, talk to us about what your needs might be, whether it's practice management software, some of the services we've spoken about. Go to lexiconservices.com/demo, and we will be happy to spend some time with you on the phone, showing you what we can do to help your firm prosper and grow. Whether, again, software or services, we're happy to help. With that, thank you very much.